They laughed at him when he was weak, but they never imagined the day he would return stronger than all of them, and his truth would shake the entire village. In a land ruled by fear and superstition, one poor teacher carried a secret that could destroy ignorance forever, but at a cost no one could have predicted. Welcome to African Tales by Sinan, stories of suspense, emotion, and lessons that last a lifetime. Tell us in the comments where and when you're watching from, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales. The village mocked a poor teacher until his true identity was revealed. Far beyond the restless towns and noisy markets, hidden between dry hills and winding rivers, lay a village forgotten by time. Its huts were simple, built of clay and patched with straw, leaning like weary old men who had lived too long. Smoke curled upward from cooking fires, carrying the smell of roasted maize and burning wood. Goats wandered lazily between narrow paths, chickens scratched the dirt for worms, and children ran barefoot, their laughter bright but short-lived, quickly silenced by sharp voices. This village had no school, no books, not even the faintest idea that words could be written down. Generations had lived and died without letters or numbers, and to them this was not strange. It was the only world they knew. They worshipped a god named Marcos, the guardian of fate. His name was carved into their fears and stitched into every custom. Marcos, they believed, watched them day and night, ready to punish if anyone dared to break the old rules. And of all rules, one was most sacred. Children must never learn. They said if children learned to read or write, they would grow proud, despise their parents, and abandon their homes. Worse still, Marcos would unleash floods, famine, or sickness on the entire village. Each morning, before the sun stretched its golden arms, children carried heavy pots of water from the stream, their small backs bent under the weight. Girls bundled grass twice their size. Boys followed fathers into the fields to weed soil or chase birds from millet. If a child dared to complain, parents scolded harshly. "Do you want the goddess of food to abandon us?" shouted Mama Fola, a strong woman whose hands were hard from grinding grain. "If you refuse to work, the whole family will starve." Fear was their compass. When storms came, they whispered, "Marcos is angry." When sickness spread, they muttered, "A child must have disobeyed." When crops failed, they declared, "Someone broke the custom. Marcos punished us." At night, families gathered around fires, shadows of flames dancing against clay walls. Elders told stories not of hope, but of fear. Old Okoro, the respected elder with a beard white as cotton, lifted his staff and spoke to wide-eyed children. "Remember this," he warned, his voice like dry leaves. "If you ever see a man scratching strange marks on wood or cloth, run. Those marks are curses. They summon demons to steal your soul." The children gasped. A little girl named Ayo clung to her mother's wrapper. "But Baba," she whispered, "what if the marks are beautiful?" Okoro's eyes blazed. "Even the snake shines before it bites. Never trust such things. Marcos sees all, and his punishment is swift." The children trembled and nodded. From that moment, curiosity became something dangerous, something forbidden. Not all were fully convinced. One evening, a teenage boy named Kato whispered to his friend Musa as they carried wood on their shoulders, "I heard traders in the market say that beyond the hills, in the towns, children gather in huts. They sit before one man who makes marks on boards, and somehow the children understand them. They say those marks are called letters." Musa dropped his bundle in shock. "Silence! Do you want Marcos to burn your tongue? If the elders hear this, we'll both be cursed." "But what if the marks bring us more food, more strength?" Cato insisted softly. No. Musa shook his head. Work brings food. Marcos brings strength. Don't speak foolishly again. Cato said no more. But that night he lay awake, staring at the roof of his hut, wondering what it would mean to know more than his fathers. Days passed, the same rhythm repeating: work, fear, obedience. The people mistook this routine for peace, but peace built on fear is fragile. One misty morning, as the cocks crowed and women lit fires for porridge, children playing near the road saw a stranger walking toward the village. He was thin, his clothes patched many times, his sandals worn smooth from long travel. His shirt had holes carefully stitched, his trousers faded, but they were clean. His face carried quiet dignity, and his eyes glowed with calm strength. In his hand was a small bundle tied with cloth. The children shrieked and ran. "A stranger! A stranger has come!" Men left their tools. Women clutched their babies tighter. And soon the whole village gathered in a circle around him. Suspicion hung in the air. Okoro stepped forward, leaning on his staff. "Who are you, stranger? What do you seek here?" The man bowed slightly. "My name is Kofi. I am a teacher." The crowd frowned. The word was strange to their ears. "A what?" "A teacher," Kofi repeated calmly. "One who gives knowledge." For a moment there was silence. Then laughter erupted like thunder. "Knowledge? Does knowledge fill the stomach?" Mama Fola scoffed. "Does knowledge plant millet?" shouted Baraka, a stern father of 3. "Does knowledge keep Marcos from punishing us?" barked Okoro. Kofi smiled gently. "Knowledge is a seed. It grows into food, into shelter, into protection. Without it, you remain in darkness." The villagers muttered, restless. They believed they already lived in the light of Marcos. To them, this ragged man sounded like a fool, or worse, a curse. They turned their backs and walked away, leaving Kofi standing alone. But he did not leave. He walked to the wide branches of a mango tree at the edge of the square. There, he spread a small cloth on the ground and opened his bundle. Inside were 3 sticks of chalk, a cracked slate board, and a torn book with half its pages missing. He sat quietly and waited. Curiosity brought the children first. They giggled, hiding behind their mother's skirts, then tiptoed closer. Kofi raised his hand and beckoned with a smile. "Come, sit with me. Let me show you something." One by one, they sat in the dust. Kofi lifted the chalk and pressed it against the slate. He drew a single mark. "A," the children gasped. "What is that?" Ayo asked in wonder. "This," Kofi said softly, "is a letter. Its name is A. With this, you can speak to the world beyond your village." He drew another mark, B. The children clapped their hands. "Draw more! Show us more!" cried Nia, Musa's little sister. Kofi taught them simple sounds, numbers on his fingers, even how to draw shapes of animals. The children's eyes shone with wonder. To them, it was magic, brighter than any story told by firelight. But laughter has wings, and wings travel fast. Parents heard their children giggling under the mango tree and stormed toward the sound. Baraka dragged his son by the arm. "Have you lost your senses? Do you want Marcos to curse us all?" He struck the boy hard across the cheek. Another mother slapped her daughter and hissed, "These marks will bring demons into our home." The villagers turned on Kofi. "Beggar!" someone shouted. "Cursed man!" another spat. Okoro raised his staff. "Leave before you destroy us." Kofi said nothing. He sat quietly, chalk still in hand, as parents pulled their children away. That night, he remained beneath the mango tree, staring at the stars. In his heart, he whispered, "Darkness cannot last forever. Even the smallest flame will one day push it away." The next morning, children crept back. Their arms bore bruises. Their eyes carried fear, but their hearts longed for more. Kofi, Ayo whispered, show us again. He smiled, lifted the chalk, and began. Day by day, more children sneaked to him even as parents beat them. Day by day, he endured insults, mockery, and curses. Day by day, he kept teaching. Fear had ruled the village for generations, but under the mango tree, a seed had been planted, a seed the elders swore to crush, but one that had already begun to grow. The days began to stretch differently after Kofi's arrival. Under the wide mango tree, the air grew thick with chalk dust and childish laughter. Each morning, when the sun was still low, children gathered around him like bees around nectar. They brought small stones to scratch letters in the dirt, sticks to draw shapes, and bright eyes that shone with the thrill of discovery. Kofi's voice was calm but steady. He taught them how to join letters into sounds, sounds into words, words into meaning. He showed them numbers, how to count beyond their fingers, and even small games of drawing pictures, goats, huts, trees. For the children, it was like touching a world that had always been hidden. Look, Ayo, he said one morning, writing her name carefully on the slate. This is your name. These marks are you. Her mouth fell open. Me? These marks are me? Yes, with these, someone who has never seen you can still know your name. Even after you are gone, your name can live. The girl clapped her hands in amazement. She ran to show her friends, shouting, I am written. I am alive on the board. The other children crowded around, begging for their turn. Me too, teacher, Musa cried. Write my name, Nia squealed. And Kofi, with patience, wrote each one, smiling at their astonishment. But wonder for children often becomes worry for parents. Soon the elders noticed their sons and daughters sneaking away from chores to sit beneath the tree. Buckets of water were forgotten at the stream, goats wandered untended, and bundles of firewood were left by the road. Baraka, red-faced with anger, found his son crouched among the children one afternoon. He stormed forward, grabbed the boy by the ear, and yanked him upright. You lazy child! The goats are hungry, and here you sit scratching dirt like a fool. He raised his hand and struck the boy across the face. The boy cried out, dropping the stone he had been using. Kofi rose calmly. Do not beat him, Baraka. He was only learning. Baraka whirled on him. Learning? What can he learn from you? You have nothing. No home, no food, no family. You live like a beggar. And you want to poison our children with your foolish marks? Kofi did not flinch. I want only to give them what was never given to me, knowledge. If they learn, their world will be bigger than this village. Baraka spat at the ground. Bigger? Their stomachs are small, teacher. Their backs are weak. Knowledge cannot feed them. Work feeds them. Fear keeps them safe. Go back where you came from. He dragged his son away, ignoring the boy's sobs. The other children shrank back, but their eyes lingered on the chalk marks Kofi had made. That night, a gathering was called at the central fire. Men and women sat in a circle, their faces flickering orange in the flames. Okoro stood, leaning on his staff. This man must leave, he declared. Every day, more children are distracted from their duties. I have seen fields left untended, goats straying into neighbors' gardens. Marcos will not forgive us if we let this continue. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Mama Fola lifted her hand. My daughter refused to grind millet today, she said bitterly. When I scolded her, she cried, the teacher says learning is important. Important? Important is food on the table, not marks on a board. Others shouted their complaints. Children refusing chores. Children repeating Kofi's words about light and darkness. Children drawing strange shapes in the dirt. To the parents, it was rebellion. To the elders, it was danger. But not all voices agreed. A thin woman named Adisa rose hesitantly. She had lost her husband to sickness the year before and raised her son alone. Her voice shook, but she spoke anyway. My boy is happier since he met the teacher. Before, he worked without joy. Now he smiles when he tells me of numbers and letters. He says he wants to write my name one day so it will live forever. Is that evil? The crowd erupted. Yes, one man barked. Evil! Dangerous! Cried another. Okoro banged his staff against the ground. Do not be deceived by tricks. Marcos punishes those who abandon our ways. If this man stays, we will all suffer. The meeting ended with anger still thick in the air. Some were convinced Kofi was a threat. A few silently wondered if perhaps he spoke truth. But fear drowned their doubts. The next day, the hostility grew sharper. When Kofi went to the market to buy dried maize, women laughed and pointed at his patched clothes. A group of young men tore the strap of his sandal and jeered, Teacher, perhaps your knowledge can mend this. Children were ordered not to sit under the mango tree, yet many returned in secret. They crept quietly at dawn or slipped away in the afternoon, hungry for the letters and numbers that danced from Kofi's chalk. Each time they came bruised from their parents' beatings, but they came anyway. One afternoon, while the children traced letters in the dust, a stone suddenly struck the slate board, shattering it into pieces. Kofi looked up to see Okoro's eldest grandson, Sefu, smirking with a group of boys. You think you're clever, beggar, Sefu sneered. You think you can trick us with your magic, but we are not fools. He snatched the torn book from Kofi's bundle and waved it high. See this? Demon's cloth. He spat on it, then tore a page and let the wind scatter it. The children cried out. Ayo ran forward, trying to grab it back, but Sefu shoved her to the ground. Kofi stepped between them. Enough, Sefu. If you hate me alone. Do not harm the children. Sefu sneered, tossed the rest of the book into the dust, and stalked away with his friends. The children rushed to gather the torn pages, smoothing them carefully, though many were ruined. Kofi sat in silence for a long time after they left. His heart ached, not for the insults, but for the fear that kept the villagers chained. Still, he refused to give up. That evening, as he walked back from the stream, Baraka and 2 other men blocked his path. Their eyes glowed with malice. You shame us, teacher, one hissed. You dare stay even after we told you to go. Baraka shoved him hard against a tree. You think you are stronger than Marcos? Let us see if Marcos saves you tonight. The men struck him, fists and sticks raining down. Kofi staggered but did not cry out. When they left him bruised and bleeding in the dust, he whispered to himself, They do not know what they do. They are blind with fear. That night, children still crept to him, finding him under the mango tree with wounds on his face. They wept, asking him to leave for his own safety. But Kofi only smiled faintly. If I leave, the flame will die. If I stay, perhaps one of you will carry it forward. For you, I will endure. The children huddled around him, touching the chalk marks on the board as if they were sacred. In their young hearts, something stronger than fear began to take root. Day by day, hostility sharpened, but so too did the children's hunger for knowledge. The war between superstition and truth was no longer silent. It was growing louder, and the village trembled on the edge of change. Morning sunlight spilled gently over the village, warming the mud walls and glittering on the surface of the stream. But in the heart of the village, bitterness was boiling. The elders had failed to drive Kofi away. Despite insults, beatings, and warnings, he still returned each day to the mango tree, chalk in hand, waiting for the children. Okoro, the elder, sat before the men at the central fire. His eyes burned with frustration. "This man is stubborn," Okoro growled. "We shamed him. We struck him. Yet he stays. If we let him continue, more children will be poisoned. Soon they will believe his words more than ours." Baraka spat into the dirt. "Then we will break him. Let the whole village see that he is a fool. Let us humiliate him until he has no dignity left. A man without dignity cannot teach." The others nodded. That very evening, whispers spread like fire, plans to ridicule the teacher in front of everyone. The next day, as Kofi walked through the marketplace to buy roasted maize, 2 young men tripped him, sending him sprawling into the dust. Laughter erupted from all sides. A woman pointed at his patched shirt. "Look at him, our great teacher, eating dirt." Another shouted, "Perhaps his chalk can clean his clothes." The crowd roared, clapping and cheering. Kofi rose slowly, dust covering his arms and face. He brushed himself off with quiet dignity and walked on without a word. The more silent he was, the angrier the villagers became. His calmness felt like defiance. That night, a wedding was held in the village square. Drums pounded, voices sang, and dancers twirled under the moonlight. In the middle of the celebration, Okoro ordered the musicians to pause. "Bring the teacher," he declared. The crowd shoved Kofi forward. His thin frame looked even smaller under the glare of the torches. Children who once learned from him hid behind their parents, afraid to be seen defending him. "Dance for us, teacher," someone mocked. "Yes, show us your magic letters with your feet." Another laughed. The crowd roared again. Baraka shoved him toward the circle. "You want to teach? Then teach us how a beggar dances." For a moment, Kofi stood still, eyes closed. He could have refused. He could have run. But instead, he lifted his arms, swayed gently, and began to move with quiet grace. His steps were slow, deliberate, almost like a prayer. The crowd expected shame, but what they saw was dignity. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then Sefu, Okoro's grandson, burst into laughter, mocking his movements. "See how he twitches, like a dying goat!" The crowd erupted again, this time with cruelty. They pushed him, jeered at him, and sang mocking songs. Kofi endured, his eyes lowered, his heart heavy. He walked away at last, leaving behind echoes of laughter that burned like fire. But humiliation did not stop there. Each day brought new tricks. Children were ordered by their parents to follow him and taunt him. They stole the little food he carried, hid his chalk, or shouted curses at him in the streets. One afternoon, as he bathed quietly in the stream, a group of youths stole his clothes, tore them into rags, and hid them in the reeds. He walked back to the village with only a blanket around him. The villagers pointed and laughed until their stomachs hurt. The mighty teacher, covered like a madman. Still, Kofi said nothing. To some, his silence looked like weakness. To a few, it looked like strength. Among those who watched was Adisa, the widow. Her son, Tunde, had once sat proudly at the mango tree, learning letters with joy. Now, under pressure, she kept him away, though her heart ached to see his disappointment. One evening she approached Kofi quietly as he sat by the tree, repairing his torn shirt. "Why do you endure this?" she asked. "Every day they shame you, they beat you. Why not leave? Surely there are kinder places where your teaching would be welcomed." Kofi looked up, his hand still stitching the cloth. "If I leave, who will show your children that they are more than tools for labor? If I go, the flame will die, and ignorance will remain their master. I stay not because it is easy, Adisa, but because it is necessary." Tears filled her eyes. She placed a small gourd of water before him. "Then may Marcos himself see your heart and spare you from their hatred." But the hatred grew. The next market day, Okoro called for silence. Standing tall with his staff, he addressed the crowd. This man claims he brings light, but what has his light done? Our children disobey. Our work is neglected. Soon Marcos will curse us all. We must prove to everyone that he is nothing but a fraud. What shall we do, elder? The crowd cried. Okoro's eyes gleamed. We will make a spectacle. We will strip him of every shred of respect. The following morning, when Kofi returned from the stream, he found the square filled with villagers. They had hung a tattered sack on a stick, painted with crude symbols, mocking letters. "This is your book, teacher," they shouted. "This is your wisdom." They forced him to stand while they paraded the sack through the village, children and adults jeering. At the end, they set the sack on fire, chanting, "So burn all your marks, so burn your foolishness." Ashes swirled in the wind, stinging his eyes. Kofi stood silently, hands folded, until the fire died. Inside him, pain burned like the flames, yet his spirit refused to break. Later that day, as he sat alone beneath the mango tree, a small group of children crept forward. Ayo, her face streaked with tears, pressed a small stone into his hand. "This is all I have," she whispered, "but please, keep teaching us. Even if they beat us, we want to learn." Others nodded behind her, their eyes pleading. Kofi looked at the stone, then at the children. He drew a simple letter in the dust with it, A, and whispered, "As long as one child is willing, I will not stop." In the shadows of laughter and mockery, the seed of knowledge was taking root, watered by courage and quiet defiance. The villagers thought they were breaking the teacher. In truth, they were forging him into something stronger. The air in the village grew heavier with each passing day. Though Kofi bore every insult, every blow, and every humiliation with patience, he refused to leave. Every morning, the children still crept to him under the mango tree, even when their parents dragged them home later with beatings. His calm persistence unsettled the elders more than anger ever could. Okoro, the oldest among them, sat one night beneath the wide baobab tree with Baraka, Abiola, and two other fathers, Olu and Ganyu. The moon spilled silver light across their faces, revealing furrowed brows and eyes filled with worry. "This man is dangerous," Okoro said, his staff tapping the earth with each word. "He hides his evil behind quietness. He lets our beatings fall on him, and yet he stays. Do you not see? His silence is his weapon." Baraka clenched his fists. "My son still sneaks to him. I caught the boy tracing marks in the sand yesterday. He says the teacher gave him a name written in white dust. How can I compete with that?" "He is twisting their minds," Olu muttered. "My daughter refused to fetch water because she wanted to learn another of his letters. She said they were beautiful, like drawings. Drawings, when work waited at home." Abiola sat apart, staring at the ground. His boy, only 7, had once been the most playful child in the village. Now the boy begged each day to sit beneath the mango tree, his eyes shining with joy whenever he spoke of the teacher. Abiola loved his son, but he feared what Okoro said was true. Knowledge would make the boy despise his own parents. Okoro leaned forward. "We have tried everything, mockery, beatings, stripping him of his dignity. Yet he endures. If he endures longer, the people will begin to admire his strength. We cannot allow that." "Then how do we rid ourselves of him?" Ganyu asked. "He has no food, no power, no family, yet he holds the children in his hand." Okoro's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "We will break him not with fists, but with shame. A man may survive hunger, even pain, but no man survives dishonor. If the village believes he is unclean, cursed, corrupt, his teaching will die with him. Baraka frowned. What dishonor will make the people turn from him forever? Okoro's voice dropped low. We will accuse him of touching a child. The others recoiled. Olu gasped. That is a grave charge. Marcos himself will strike us if we lie. That is why it will work, Okoro said coldly. The people will not question it. They already believe his marks are curses. If we say he has corrupted a child, they will burn him alive. Even if he protests, no one will listen. The men shifted uncomfortably. Even Baraka hesitated, though his hatred for Kofi was deep. Whose child will we use? He asked. Okoro turned to Abiola. Yours. Abiola's head jerked up. Mine? No. My boy is innocent. He loves the teacher. Yes. But to stain him with such a lie? Okoro's gaze hardened. Your boy is the perfect choice. Everyone knows he follows the teacher. No one will doubt the story. One sacrifice to save the village is a price worth paying. Abiola's hands trembled. I cannot do this to my son. Baraka leaned forward, his voice sharp. Do you want your son to grow into a man who looks down on you? Who abandons you because of this stranger? If you do nothing, that is the future you choose. Better a moment's shame than a lifetime of disobedience. Olu added, and think, Abiola, this lie will not kill your boy. He will forget. But the teacher will be ruined forever. We will be safe. Abiola's heart twisted. He thought of his son's bright eyes, his laughter when he drew letters in the dust. He thought of the boy's small arms wrapping around him at night. Could he really betray his child to destroy the man who had given him joy? Okoro's staff struck the ground. Decide, Abiola. Do you choose your son or the survival of the entire village? Sweat trickled down Abiola's face. Fear of Marcos warred with love for his child. At last, he whispered, If it must be done, I will obey. The others nodded grimly. That night, they prepared the plot. Herbs were gathered, dark green leaves ground into powder that caused heavy sleep. A chicken was slaughtered, its blood collected in a gourd. The lie took form under the moonlight, each man's silence sealing the conspiracy. When Abiola returned home, his wife Abeni saw the shadow in his eyes. What burden do you carry, husband? She asked softly. Abiola could not meet her gaze. I do this for the village, for Marcos. Forgive me, Abeni. But Abeni's heart filled with dread. She knew, without words, that something terrible was about to unfold. The night was heavy, the air thick with the smell of smoke and the cries of distant hyenas. Inside Abiola's hut, the boy ate his porridge without knowing his father had mixed the herbs into it. Soon his eyelids drooped, and he slumped into sleep, breathing softly. Abeni covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. He is just a child. Why do this? Because Marcos demands it, Abiola said bitterly, though his voice shook. Okoro and the other men entered quietly. Together, they lifted the sleeping child, smeared the chicken blood onto his clothes and thighs, and carried him into the village square. Torches flickered as word spread quickly through the huts. Something had happened. Within minutes, men, women, and children crowded around the square. The boy was laid before the fire, limp and blood-stained. Abiola knelt beside him, wailing loudly. My son! My poor son! The teacher has defiled him! Gas tore through the crowd. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Men shouted in anger. Mama Fola screamed, I warned you all! That cursed man has brought demons into our homes. Okoro raised his staff, his voice booming with false fury. Did I not tell you? Did I not say his marks were curses? Now you see, he has corrupted a child. Marcos's wrath will fall upon us all if we do not act swiftly. Fear turned quickly into rage. The villagers shouted, cursed, demanded blood. "Bring him," Baraka bellowed. "Bring the teacher. Let him answer for his crime." A group of men stormed to the mango tree where Kofi sat, reading from his torn book to a few brave children. The firelight glinted on their clubs as they seized his arms. "What is this?" Kofi asked, startled but calm. Baraka's spit struck his face. "You dare ask? You touched a child, you devil! You poisoned his body as you poisoned his mind." They dragged him into the square. The crowd roared, torches waving like angry stars. At the center, Kofi saw the boy lying still, blood staining his clothes. His heart clenched. He understood the trick immediately. "I swear before heaven and earth," Kofi said, his voice steady, though blows rained on him. "I have never harmed this child. He sleeps because of herbs. The blood is not his. This is a lie." "Liar!" Mama Fola shrieked. "The blood is plain before us." "The blood is on your hands," Kofi cried, his eyes sweeping across the elders. "You blind your children with fear, and now you blind yourselves with lies. Marcos does not demand this. You do." But the mob drowned his voice in screams. Stones struck his body. Fists pummeled his ribs. They tore at his bundle, scattering chalk and pages into the dust. Someone threw them into the fire and the flames consumed his few possessions. Men shouted, "Beat him! Kill him! Appease Marcos!" Okoro raised his staff above the chaos. "Enough! Do not kill him here. Marcos demands justice, not blood in our square. We will cast him into the jungle, broken, shamed, left for the beasts. Let his bones rot as a warning to all who follow his ways." The mob cheered their elders' words. Dragging Kofi through the dirt, they beat him one last time at the edge of the forest. His body was thrown into the darkness, torches fading behind the trees. Pain flooded every bone. Every breath ached. Yet even as his vision blurred, Kofi whispered into the night, "Children, hold the flame. Do not let it die." Back in the village, Abiola sat in silence, staring at his boy who still slept peacefully. Abini wept beside him, whispering prayers that the teacher's blood would not curse their house. Abiola's soul twisted with guilt. He had saved nothing, only destroyed a man who had shown kindness to his child. The villagers, however, celebrated. They believed Marcos had been appeased, that their fear was lifted. Songs of relief echoed into the night. But in the quiet hearts of Adisa, Ayo, Musa, and the children who had once gathered under the mango tree, sorrow grew like a heavy cloud. They knew the truth, and though the village declared the teacher dead, they prayed that somewhere in the shadows, he still lived. The jungle swallowed Kofi that night. His body was broken, ribs aching, face swollen, every breath cutting through him like fire. The villagers had left him on the edge of the forest, torches fading as their chants still echoed in the distance. The earth beneath him was damp, alive with crawling insects. Above, the trees leaned like giants, their branches tangled, blocking out the stars. He tried to move, but pain shot through his chest. His arms shook. His legs refused to obey. All he could do was drag himself slowly, inch by inch, until his back rested against the trunk of a tree. Blood stained his torn clothes, trickling down his side, soaking into the earth. His eyes fluttered closed, darkness pressing in. In that silence, memories rushed over him. The laughter of children beneath the mango tree, their bright eyes as they saw letters come alive. Ayo clapping when she first saw her name written. Musa, bold and stubborn, insisting that numbers were like secret treasures. Little Naya tracing shapes with her fingers, giggling at her own crooked lines. They had trusted him, believed in him, and now he had been cast out like a criminal. A wave of despair washed through him. Was this the end? Would beasts tear him apart before dawn? Would the children ever know the truth of what happened? But even as hopelessness gnawed at him, a spark of resolve burned faintly in his chest. His body might fail, but the seed had already been planted. Somewhere in that village, children would still remember the chalk marks, the joy of discovery. That seed could not be beaten out of them. Hours crawled by. The night air grew colder, heavy with the sounds of crickets and the distant howl of hyenas. At one point, rustling in the bushes made his heart race. A pair of glowing eyes appeared in the dark. A jackal crept forward, sniffing, teeth glinting in the moonlight. Kofi whispered hoarsely, "If this is my end, let me go knowing I tried." The jackal inched closer, then suddenly froze. A deeper growl echoed from the trees, and the smaller beast fled. Relief washed over him, though fear remained. He slumped back against the trunk, clinging to consciousness. Meanwhile, back in the village, the people celebrated. They believed Marcos had been appeased. Women sang songs of victory around their fires. Men boasted that they had driven out the curse, and children were warned never to speak the teacher's name again. The mango tree stood empty, its ground cold, the chalk dust washed away by evening dew. But not everyone joined the celebration. Inside her small hut, Adisa sat with her son Tunde, who stared at her with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Mama," he whispered, "why did they hurt the teacher? He never did wrong. He only showed us letters." Adisa's throat tightened. She pulled the boy close, stroking his hair. "Because fear blinds people, my son. They could not see his goodness." "But will he come back?" Tunde asked, his voice breaking. Adisa looked away, unable to answer. In her heart, she feared the worst. Ayo lay awake in her family's hut, staring at the roof. She could still hear the mob's cries, see the stones hitting Kofi, feel her own helplessness. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. She whispered into the night, "Please, teacher, don't die. Please come back." Musa, though young, felt anger burning in his chest. Sitting outside under the stars, he clenched his fists. "One day," he muttered, "I will prove them wrong. I will learn everything he tried to teach us." But for now, the village was silent. The mango tree was deserted, the chalk gone, the laughter replaced by whispers of fear. Days turned into weeks. Children no longer gathered to learn, but their eyes carried sadness. Work returned, as before, fetching water, carrying firewood, tending goats. Yet in their hearts, the image of Kofi's gentle smile remained, haunting them like a ghost. Abiola's home was filled with shadows heavier than any others. His boy had awakened the morning after the lie, confused and weak but unharmed. He asked why his clothes were stained, why the people had been crying. Abiola could not answer. He turned away, shame eating him alive. His wife Abeni could not bear to look at him. At night she whispered curses under her breath, calling him coward, liar, betrayer. The guilt gnawed at Abiola until his nights were sleepless. He often dreamt of Kofi's battered face, his voice crying out above the mob, "The blood is on your hands." He woke in cold sweat, trembling. Meanwhile, in the jungle, Kofi clung stubbornly to life. His wounds festered, his body weakened, but he dragged himself slowly toward water. He found a stream, drinking deeply, washing his wounds. Hunger clawed at his belly. He ate wild berries, roots, whatever his trembling hands could gather. Days blurred together. Sometimes he thought he heard voices. Sometimes he thought he saw children's faces in the trees. But the spark inside him refused to die. Each morning he whispered to himself, "One more day, for the children." Back in the village, whispers began to grow. Some people wondered aloud why Marcos had not punished them after the teacher's exile. Crops still struggled. Sickness still visited. Quarrels still broke out. Had Marcos really been appeased? Or had they only silenced an innocent man? Okoro silenced such doubts quickly with threats, but unease lingered, especially in the eyes of the children. They no longer laughed as before. They worked in silence, their spirits dimmed. The mango tree stood like a monument of loss, its branches swaying in the wind, waiting for a figure who never returned. The rains arrived sooner than expected that season. Heavy clouds gathered over the village, releasing torrents of water that turned paths into rivers of mud. Farmers cursed, women struggled to keep their cooking fires alive, and children trudged through the wet fields with lowered heads. Normally, the rains were welcomed, but this year they seemed harsh, relentless. Some whispered it was because of Marcos testing them, but others muttered quietly that perhaps it was punishment for what they had done to the teacher. Those whispers spread like damp smoke, clinging to huts and hearts. One evening, Mama Fola sat by the fire, her hands busy grinding maize. Her daughter Ayo sat quietly nearby, staring into the flames. "Why are you so silent, girl?" Mama Fola asked sharply. "Tomorrow you must wake early to fetch water." Ayo didn't answer at first. Then she said softly, "Because I dreamt of him again, Mama. The teacher." He was smiling. "He said he would come back." Mama Fola froze, her grinding stone pausing mid-motion. She glared at her daughter. "Do not speak of him. He is gone, cursed, dead in the jungle. Forget him." But Ayo shook her head stubbornly. "I cannot. He taught me my name. He showed me there is more than this village. I will not forget him." Her mother raised her hand to strike her, but stopped midway. Something in her daughter's eyes, firm, unyielding, made her lower it again. Mama Fola turned back to the maze, though her hands trembled. Across the village, Musa had become restless. He did his chores, but his thoughts were always with Kofi. Late at night, he scratched letters into the dirt outside his hut, repeating them under his breath, afraid they would fade from his memory. N-O-L-I-G. He stumbled, forgetting the rest, then struck the earth in frustration. "I need him. I cannot learn alone." His father caught him one night and whipped him for idleness, but Musa clenched his jaw, refusing to cry. The pain only deepened his resolve. Meanwhile, Abiola's guilt consumed him more each day. His boy had grown quiet, often waking in the night with tears he couldn't explain. Abeni no longer spoke to Abiola, except to scold him. The house felt like a tomb. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, Abiola sought Okoro. He found the elder sitting outside, his staff beside him, eyes half closed as if in meditation. "Elder," Abiola said, his voice shaking, "my soul is heavy. I cannot sleep. The teacher's face haunts me. What if we wronged him? What if Marco sees our lie and punishes us?" Okoro's eyes snapped open. "Silence. Do you wish to bring ruin upon us all? We did what was necessary. Do not question it again." "But my son," Abiola began. "Your son will forget," Okoro cut him off. "Do not poison him with weakness. The teacher is gone. Let the earth swallow him." Abiola bowed his head, but inside felt only hollow despair. Far away in the jungle, Kofi's struggle continued. The rains made survival harder. His wounds burned with infection, fever gripped him, and hunger gnawed endlessly. Yet he forced himself onward, crawling, staggering, leaning on branches. He found shelter in a hollow tree trunk, where he lay shivering through stormy nights. He drank from puddles, chewed bitter roots, whispered prayers into the darkness. At times he thought he heard children's voices, calling him, urging him to live. Teacher, write my name again. Teacher, show me numbers. Teacher, don't leave us. Those voices kept him alive. Weeks passed. His body wasted, but slowly the fever broke. His wounds began to scab. His strength returned little by little. He gathered wild fruits, learned which herbs eased his pain, and waited for the right time to return. In the village, the absence of the teacher grew heavier than his presence had ever been. The children carried his memory like a secret treasure. Ayo whispered lessons to the younger ones, teaching them to scratch the shape she remembered. Musa practiced counting goats in whispers. Even Nia, the youngest, proudly drew crooked letters in the dirt, though she could not name them. The elders saw this persistence and grew uneasy. Even without him, his poison lingers, Okoro muttered darkly. We may have to do more. But fear of Marcos kept the people silent. They dared not speak Kofi's name aloud. Months dragged on. The mango tree stood lonely, its shade no longer filled with laughter. Parents still forced their children to work, yet the spark in their eyes was gone. The joy had been beaten out, replaced by quiet sadness. Adisa often stood at the edge of the square, staring at the tree, her heart aching. She remembered Kofi's calm words, his wounds, his endurance. Sometimes she wished she had shouted the truth that night, defended him, fought for him. But she too had been silent, and her silence felt like betrayal. One stormy night, lightning cracked across the sky, striking a tree at the edge of the fields. Flames leapt high, villagers rushing with pots of water to quench it. The sight filled them with dread. Marcos is still angry, they whispered. But in a few hearts, a different thought grew. Perhaps it was not Marcos who was angry at all. Perhaps it was the teacher's truth returning, demanding to be heard. Deep in the jungle, beneath the cover of dripping leaves, Kofi rose to his feet for the first time in many weeks. His body was scarred, his strength thin, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. He looked toward the distant glow of the village. They think I am gone, he whispered, but I will return. And when I do, they will see what knowledge truly is. The jungle carried his words into the night, while in the village children lay awake, whispering his name into the darkness, praying for the impossible, that the teacher would one day walk back beneath the mango tree. Months had turned into nearly a year since the teacher was cast out. The village, once loud with laughter under the mango tree, had grown heavy with silence. Though work continued as always, children fetching water, women grinding maize, men tilling fields, something in the air felt broken. The spark that had once flickered in the children's eyes was gone, replaced by weary obedience. The elders declared that peace had returned. Marcos is pleased, Okoro announced often, raising his staff. The curse is lifted. We are safe. But the crops did not grow better. Sickness still struck, and quarrels still broke out. Doubts whispered quietly among the people, though none dared speak them too loudly. One afternoon, as the sun beat down on the square, a distant rumble shook the earth. At first, the villagers thought it was thunder, but then they saw them. Machines of metal, unlike anything their eyes had ever witnessed. Cars, black and gleaming, rolled down the dusty road. Behind them came others, bigger, with strange markings on the side. Children dropped their water pots. Women gasped. Men shaded their eyes, stunned. No such vehicles had ever entered their village. They watched as the convoy slowed and stopped right in the square. Doors opened. Men in uniform stepped out, scanning the area with sharp eyes. Some carried strange objects at their sides, guns, though the villagers did not know the word. From the largest car stepped a tall man in a dark suit. His shoes shone like mirrors. His glasses glinted in the sunlight. He walked with confidence, his posture straight, his face calm. For a moment, the villagers were struck dumb. Never had they seen such wealth, such authority walking before them. "Who is he?" a woman whispered. "Perhaps a government man," another replied nervously. "Or a chief from the cities," murmured Baraka, swallowing hard. The man raised his hand, and silence spread through the square. He slowly removed his glasses, revealing eyes that many recognized at once. Gasps tore through the crowd. Mouths fell open. Hearts pounded. "It cannot be," Mama Fola whispered, clutching her chest. Okoro's staff slipped from his trembling hands. Ayo clapped her hands over her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. It was him, Kofi, the man they had mocked, beaten, humiliated, and thrown to the jungle to die. He now stood before them alive, stronger than ever, dressed not in rags but in the finest clothes they had ever seen. Baraka stumbled backward, his voice shaking. Impossible. He was dead. Kofi's gaze swept over the villagers. His eyes were calm, but beneath them burned something fierce, not hatred, but truth. "I'm not dead," he said softly, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. "I lived, and I have returned." Murmurs spread like wildfire. Children peered from behind their parents, eyes wide with awe. Some of the youngest tugged at their mother's skirts, whispering, "Teacher, the teacher has come back." The uniformed men formed a circle around Kofi, keeping space clear. Another car door opened, and officials in fine clothing stepped out, carrying folders and rolled papers. Their presence only deepened the villagers' confusion. "What is happening?" Abiola whispered hoarsely to Abini. "His wife? Why is he here? Like this?" But no one had answers. Kofi looked at the mango tree in the distance, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. A faint smile touched his lips. He turned back to the crowd, his voice stronger now. "You cast me out because you feared knowledge. You beat me because you thought ignorance was safety. But ignorance is the true curse. And now you will see what knowledge brings." His words cut through the square like a blade. The villagers shifted uneasily, shame pressing heavy on their shoulders. Okoro, desperate to regain control, shouted, "Do not listen! This man is a trickster, a demon! He returns with sorcery to deceive us again." But Kofi raised his hand, and behind him, one of the officials unfurled a large banner showing images, bright colors, strange designs. The villagers gasped, crowding closer. They saw pictures of great buildings with many windows, of children in uniforms writing on desks, of books stacked higher than their huts. "This," Kofi declared, pointing, "is a school, a place where children learn to read, to write, to build futures greater than toil and fear. I will build one here, in this village." The crowd erupted in gasps and cries. Some fell to their knees. Others stared in disbelief. Baraka stammered, A school? Here? For free?" "Yes," Kofi replied firmly. "For free. Every child will be welcome. No superstition, no fear, no Marcos to chain them. Only knowledge to set them free." A silence settled on the crowd, thick as smoke. The word school echoed in their minds, strange and terrifying, yet dazzling. For generations, they had believed that letters brought curses, that numbers offended the gods. Now, before their very eyes, stood the man they had banished, speaking of knowledge as though it were salvation. Children tugged at their parents' arms. "Mama, I want to go there," whispered little Naya. Her mother hushed her quickly, eyes darting to Okoro. The old elder's face was red with fury. He lifted his staff, his voice cracking with desperation. Do not be deceived. This man is a devil in fine clothing. He left us cursed, and now he returns with soldiers to enslave us. Do not forget, he defiled a child. The villagers gasped, some nodding in fear, others turning uncertainly toward Kofi. For a moment, doubt rippled through the crowd. Kofi's gaze fell on Abiola, who stood trembling beside his wife. The silence stretched until the guilty man could no longer bear it. His knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. It was a lie, Abiola cried, his voice shaking. The teacher never harmed my son. Okoro forced me to say it. We drugged the boy, smeared him with blood. It was all a lie to destroy him. A collective gasp swept through the square. Abeni burst into tears, clutching her son as if to shield him from her husband's confession. The boy, confused, looked up at his father with wide, wounded eyes. You, Mama Fola whispered, her voice trembling. You lied? Abiola bowed his head. Yes, and I've carried the weight ever since. Forgive me, teacher. Forgive me, people. Chaos erupted. Some shouted angrily at Abiola. Others turned on Okoro. The old man's hands shook, but his voice still thundered. Do not listen. He betrays me to save his own skin. Do not forget. Marcos will punish us if we follow this man. But his words no longer carried the same strength. The seed of doubt had been planted too deep. Kofi stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. For years, you lived in fear of Marcos. Tell me, has Marcos ever brought you more food? Has Marcos healed your sick? Has Marcos lifted you from toil? No. You remain in darkness because ignorance is your true god. Fear is your true master. The officials behind him set up a great screen powered by a generator. A hum filled the air. Then light burst across the canvas. The villagers gasped, shielding their eyes. When they dared to look, they saw moving images, real people on the screen. Cities filled with tall buildings, doctors in white coats healing the sick, children writing in books, women working with machines, men speaking into small glowing boxes that carried voices across the world. Cries of awe and disbelief rose. Is this sorcery? Someone whispered. No, Kofi replied, his voice steady. This is knowledge. This is the world beyond your hills. And your children deserve to be part of it. Tears filled Ayo's eyes. She clutched her mother's hand. Do you see, Mama? He spoke truth. Musa's heart pounded as he stared at the images. So much exists beyond this place. Baraka sank to his knees, covering his face. His anger, his pride, his hatred, all seemed small before the glowing truth. What have we done? He murmured. Then, before the crowd, the officials unrolled papers stamped with seals. By order of the government, one announced, land has been set aside here. Funds approved. Construction will begin immediately. A school will be built in this village, free for all. Cheers erupted from the children, their voices rising like birds freed from cages. Some of the adults wept openly, torn between shame and hope. Only Okoro still fought, slamming his staff into the earth. This will destroy us, he shouted. Marcos will strike us down. At that moment, lightning flashed across the sky, thunder booming like drums. The villagers gasped, fear surging. But the rain that followed was gentle, cool, washing the dust from their faces. Instead of terror, a strange peace filled the air. Kofi raised his head toward the sky. This is no curse. This is renewal. Marcos was never your god. He was your fear, and fear has no power when knowledge shines. Okoro's staff slipped from his trembling hands. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, the old man had no words. Children rushed to the mango tree, touching its trunk as though it were sacred once more. Here, Ayo cried. This is where it began. This is where we will learn again. Kofi looked at them, his eyes softening. Yes, here it began, and from here it will grow. As the villagers watched, the man they had once mocked as a beggar now stood before them as their savior, not with vengeance, but with forgiveness, not with curses, but with knowledge. And though shame burned in their hearts, hope began to take root, hope that their children's future might be brighter than their past. The villagers stood frozen in the square, their eyes still locked on the glowing screen that showed a world they had never imagined. Buildings that touched the clouds, bridges of steel, children dressed in uniforms reading thick books, machines plowing fields, doctors curing the sick. It was as though the sky itself had opened to reveal another universe. Yet amidst their awe, a heavy silence grew. For though wonder filled their eyes, shame weighed on their hearts. The man they had mocked, beaten, and cast out had returned not as a broken beggar, but as a man of wealth and power. Kofi stepped forward slowly, his gaze sweeping across the villagers. His voice was calm, yet carried the force of thunder. You called me cursed. You spat on me, beat me, burned my belongings. You accused me of crimes I did not commit. And still, I returned. Do you know why? No one answered. Even Okoro lowered his head, his hands trembling on his staff. Kofi's eyes softened slightly as he looked at the children. Because of them. Because I saw light in their eyes when they traced their first letters. Because I knew if the seed of knowledge was planted here, it could not be uprooted. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others avoided his gaze, too ashamed to meet it. Kofi turned to the officials behind him. One stepped forward with a leather case. He opened it, pulling out a thick folder of papers stamped with seals. These are government documents, Kofi explained. I am not a poor beggar. I am the founder of the Amari Foundation, an organization that builds schools in forgotten places like yours. Before I build anywhere, I go myself. I live among the people to see their hearts, to test if they are ready to embrace knowledge. I came to you not in wealth, but in rags to see if you would accept truth even from the humble. Gasps filled the air. Women pressed their hands to their mouths. Men exchanged shocked glances. You mean, Abiola whispered hoarsely, all along you were wealthy? Kofi nodded. Wealth is not only money, it is knowledge. And I came with both. But you saw only my patched clothes. You saw only poverty. And so, you mocked me. The shame of the people deepened. Mama Fola clutched Ayo's hand, tears rolling down her cheeks. We were blind, she murmured, blind and cruel. Then Kofi's voice hardened. He pointed at Okoro. And worse, some among you spread lies. You accused me of violating a child. You forced a father to betray his son. For this, you must answer. The crowd stirred uneasily. Okoro's face drained of color. His hands shook violently as he leaned on his staff. Do not listen to him, he shouted. He twists truth with his silver tongue. He is a devil in disguise. But his words no longer held power. At Kofi's signal, 2 uniformed men stepped forward. They seized Okoro by the arms. He struggled weakly, his voice breaking. Release me. Marcos will curse you all. You cannot chain me. Baraka stepped forward, his face pale but his voice firm. No, Elder. It was not Marcos who cursed us. It was your lies. You poisoned us with fear. The villagers murmured in agreement. Some spat in disgust. Others turned away, ashamed they had ever followed him. Okoro's cries faded as he was dragged toward the cars. For the first time, the people saw him not as a protector, but as the source of their bondage. Abiola fell to his knees before Kofi, tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me. I obeyed him. I betrayed you, betrayed my son. The lie has eaten my soul every night. Forgive me, teacher." Kofi looked down at him. Pain flickered in his eyes, but also compassion. "I forgive you, Abiola. You were a prisoner of fear, just as all of them were. But you must teach your son the truth now. Show him courage, not fear." Abiola sobbed, bowing his head to the ground. His wife Abini clutched his arm, relief and shame mingling in her tears. The square buzzed with murmurs. People began to shout, not in anger now, but in grief. "We wronged him. We listened to lies. We mocked the one who came to help us." Kofi raised his hand, silencing them. "You cannot erase what was done, but you can learn from it. That is the purpose of knowledge, to reveal truth, even when it hurts." He gestured to the officials. More banners were unfurled, showing plans of buildings, a wide school with strong walls, desks, chalkboards, books, even playgrounds. The villagers stared as though they were glimpsing a palace. "This," Kofi said firmly, "will rise where fear once stood, and your children will no longer be slaves to ignorance. They will learn to read, to write, to count, to build. They will know they are worth more than superstition, and none of you will ever again call knowledge a curse." Children cheered, clapping their hands. Some ran forward and hugged Kofi's legs, their tears soaking his fine trousers. Ayo whispered, "You came back, teacher. You kept your promise." Musa's voice shook with excitement. "Please, show us more letters." Kofi smiled, resting his hands gently on their heads. "Soon, my children. Very soon." The square erupted with a new kind of noise. Not fear, not anger, but hope awakening after a long slumber. The guards led Okoro toward the cars, but a voice rose from the back of the crowd. "Wait!" Baraka stepped forward, knees shaking, pride crumbling. "I was part of it. I struck him. I lied about him. I helped throw him into the night." He lifted his hands, palms open. "If there is punishment, let it fall on me too." Murmurs swelled, shock, anger, a few pitying sighs. Abeni clutched her son, eyes wet. Mama Fola stared at Baraka, then at Kofi as if waiting for thunder. Kofi looked from Okoro to Baraka, then to the villagers. "Justice is not revenge," he said quietly. "Justice is truth that teaches. Okoro will answer to the law. The others will answer here, with work that heals what they broke." The official nearest him nodded. "Charges are filed against the elder for coercion, false accusation, and incitement to violence," he signaled. The guards escorted Okoro into a vehicle. The door shut with a heavy thud that echoed like a drumbeat, ending an old song. Kofi faced Baraka. "You will help build the school, brick by brick. You will carry stone for the foundation where once you carried stones to throw." Baraka bowed his head. "I will." He turned to the crowd. "All who mocked, all who struck, all who believed lies, come tomorrow. Bring your hands, bring your backs. We will raise something worthy of your children." Ayo's voice rang out, small but steady. "And can mothers come too?" Kofi smiled. "Mothers will be our strength. Fathers, our scaffolds. Children, our light." The generator hummed again. The screen changed to drawings. A wide, airy building with a roof that could drink rain and send it to a clean tank. Windows that welcomed wind. A kitchen for porridge. Latrines that kept water pure. Desks stood in rows. Chalkboards waited. Shelves reached for books. Another drawing showed a second building, evening house, with mats and lanterns. That, Kofi said, pointing, is for you, adults. Letters are not only for children. Each evening, you will learn to read your names, count your goats, write your prices at market, speak to the world beyond. Ignorance will not be your inheritance. Whispers rose, surprised and hopeful. Abiola lifted a trembling hand. Even for me? Especially for you, Kofi answered. You will read the truth with your own eyes. He motioned. The officials unfolded another sheet, an agreement stamped and signed. Here is the land grant. Here are the funds. Here are the teachers we will train from among your best. We begin at first light. From the convoy, workers carried out boxes, books with bright covers, chalk, slates, pencils that glinted like small spears of sunlight. Children surged forward, then paused, uncertain, glancing at their parents. Take them, Kofi said softly. They belong to you. Little Nia stepped first, fingers hovering over a pencil as if it might burn. She picked it up, held it to her chest, and laughed through tears. That broke the dam. Children ran, hands outstretched, the square filling with shouts and giggles. Some clutched books like newborn kids. Others pressed slates to their faces, breathing in the scent of possibility. Kofi raised his hand again, and the square quieted. You deserve to know how I survived. Faces leaned closer. I did not die in the jungle. A hunter found me at dawn, broken and bleeding. He called rangers. A clinic took me. A city healed me. When strength returned, I returned with truth. He paused, eyes distant. I grew up in a village like this. I watched my mother, also a teacher, hide primers under baskets because men feared letters. When she died, I promised to fight the darkness she faced. I promised to return to places like this with light. A moan rolled through the crowd, regret mixed with reverence. Adisa wiped her eyes openly. We failed you, she said. We failed ourselves. You stumbled, Kofi replied. Now rise. He drew a line in the dust with his heel, straight and clean. From this line forward, no child is beaten for learning. From this line forward, no elder frightens a parent with Marcos. From this line forward, truth has a home here. Silence followed, deep and full. Then, slowly at first, villagers stepped across the line. Abini, with her son, Adisa, with Tunde, Baraka with lowered head, Mama Fola gripping Ayo's hand. More and more crossed, until the square itself seemed to breathe easier. Kofi signaled once more. Two women in crisp dresses opened a metal case and lifted out a small device. A filter, Kofi said. Dirty water in, clean water out. They poured murky water. Clear water streamed from the spout. Gasps, then applause, rose like rain on a tin roof. Knowledge is not only letters, he said. It is clean water, safe births, fair prices, strong harvests. It is learning why thunder roars and how to keep lightning from your huts. It is knowing your worth. He turned to Abiola. Stand with me. Abiola obeyed, sweating, ashamed. Your boy was used. We will protect him, and every child here. We established a council, 3 women, 3 men, 2 youths. Any accusation goes to them first. No mobs, no lies, only truth. A cheer answered. Relief, agreement, resolve. Finally, Kofi walked to the mango tree. He placed his palm on the bark and closed his eyes. The children pressed close. A ring of small faces lifted like flowers. We name this place, he said. Not the tree of fear, but the tree of first letters. Tree of first letters, the children echoed, voices bright. Kofi turned back to the square. Tomorrow we break ground. Tonight we do something harder. He drew breath. We forgive. He faced the people who had struck him, mocked him, spit upon him. I forgive you. He looked at Abeni and Abiola. I forgive you. His gaze swept the crowd, gentle but unblinking. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing a different future. Ayo stepped forward, clutching her new book. Then, let our future begin now. Kofi nodded. Now. Drums began softly, tentative at first, then stronger. Not the drums of mockery from the cruel wedding, long ago, but a rhythm like a heartbeat. Women sang a low melody. Men added harmony, rough but honest. Children swayed, pencils lifted like candles. The guards relaxed. The officials smiled. The square, once a theater of fear, became a classroom without walls. Under a soft, patient rain, the village rehearsed a new story, not of Marcos and curses, but of chalk and courage. Kofi raised a final promise above the music. When the school opens, uniforms will be simple, books free, porridge hot each morning. The best students will travel to the city. Some will study medicine, some engineering, some teaching. And those who choose teaching, he smiled at Ayo, at Musa, at Nia, will return to plant more trees of first letters in places still afraid of the light. A wind moved through the leaves, and the mango tree answered with a hush like blessing. The people lifted their faces to the rain, letting it wash ash from the past. In that cleansing, the village understood. Revelation was not only that Kofi was rich, or powerful, or protected. The revelation was simpler, greater. He had always been what they were meant to become. By the time the convoy lights dimmed and the generator stilled, the square no longer felt like the place where a lie had ruled. It felt like a threshold. The children would step through first, books against their hearts, and the elders, humbled, changed, would follow, learning to pronounce their own names as if for the first time. Tomorrow, shovels would bite the earth. Tonight, words did. And the deepest word spoken aloud, the one even fear could not swallow, was the one the village finally dared to say together, begin. The next morning dawned brighter than any the village had known. The rain had washed the dust from the huts, the trees glistened with droplets, and the air carried a freshness that felt like a blessing. For years, mornings had meant labor, fear, and superstition. But this morning was different. This morning carried hope. At first light, people gathered at the square with tools in hand, hoes, baskets, even bare hands ready to dig. Baraka stood at the front, a pickaxe on his shoulder, his head bowed in humility. Abiola was beside him, holding bricks that had been delivered in the convoy trucks. Women carried water pots to mix mortar, their babies tied to their backs. Even the children, once forbidden to approach, now clutched small stones and sticks, eager to help. Kofi arrived with the officials, but unlike yesterday's solemn return, today his face carried warmth. He removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and took a shovel himself. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he drove it into the earth. "If I can dig," he said with a smile, "then so can all of you." The people cheered and began their work. The site chosen for the school was just beyond the mango tree. The first letters of the foundation were marked by rope, and soon shovels bit into the ground. Sweat rolled down faces, laughter rang out, songs rose from the women to give rhythm to the labor. Children sang along, their voices bright as morning birds. Mama Fola, who once scolded her daughter for learning, worked beside Ayo mixing mud for bricks. She looked at her child, pride softening her stern face. "You were right," she whispered. "Forgive me for doubting." Ayo's eyes shone. "We will learn together." "Mama." Musa carried stone after stone, refusing to rest. His father watched in silence, remembering the nights he had beaten the boy for chasing letters. At last, he set down his own basket, laid a hand on Musa's shoulder, and said quietly, "Teach me, son, when you learn. Teach me what he showed you." The boy nodded fiercely, his chest swelling with pride. Day after day, the school rose higher. Brick walls grew, strong and straight. Wooden beams stretched across, roofs laid with iron sheets that shone under the sun. Windows framed the world in rectangles of promise. Villagers painted the walls with colors they had never dared imagine. Bright blues, greens, and yellows. Children ran around, chanting the alphabet Kofi had once shown them under the mango tree. A, B, C! Their voices echoed through the valley. But it was not only the school building that transformed. The people themselves changed. Old grudges softened. Neighbors helped one another. Fear of Marcos began to dissolve like mist under sunlight. Instead of whispering about curses, they debated where desks should go, how many books would be needed, which corner should hold the chalkboard. Abiola worked harder than anyone, driven by guilt, but also by a desperate need for redemption. One evening, as he placed bricks carefully into the wall, he turned to Kofi. I can't undo the lie, but let me be remembered as a man who built truth, not destroyed it. Kofi laid a hand on his shoulder. It is never too late to change the story you leave behind. As days turned into weeks, the school neared completion. The final step was the planting of a flag, a simple cloth with the emblem of the Amari Foundation, an open book beneath a rising sun. The entire village gathered to watch. Children pressed close, their eyes sparkling. Women held each other's hands. Men stood tall, though their hearts were humbled. Kofi lifted the flag, his voice ringing out. This is not my school. This is yours. Protect it. Honor it. Let it be the well from which your children drink light. No Marcos can strike down knowledge. Only fear can. And today, fear is dead. The flag rose high, fluttering against the blue sky. The villagers erupted into cheers. Some cried openly, others danced. Children clapped their hands until they ached. The mango tree swayed nearby, no longer lonely, but now the guardian of a new beginning. The day of the school's opening arrived like a festival. From sunrise, the village square bustled with life. Women wore their brightest wrappers, patterns of red and gold shining in the light. Men dressed in freshly washed tunics, some even stitching patches overnight to look their best. Children's faces were scrubbed clean, their hair braided or shaved neat. Drums rolled, songs floated, and the smell of roasted meat and sweet porridge filled the air. For the first time in living memory, the gathering was not for a wedding, not for a funeral, not for appeasing Marcos, but for celebration. The new school stood proud beside the mango tree. Its walls gleamed with fresh paint, its windows sparkled, and rows of wooden desks waited inside. The chalkboard, smooth and black, stood ready like a silent promise. Books were stacked neatly on shelves, pencils arranged in jars, slates polished. Even the air inside smelled of hope, wood, chalk, and possibility. The villagers gathered at the entrance, buzzing with excitement and disbelief. They could hardly imagine that such a building had risen from their soil. Children clutched each other's hands, too eager to wait, eyes darting from the doorway to the officials. Kofi stepped forward, dressed not in a suit this time, but in simple traditional cloth, as if to remind them he was still one of them. At his side stood Ayo, Musa, Nia, and Tunde, children who had once sat under the mango tree, their faces glowing with pride. He raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. Today, Kofi began, we bury ignorance. Today, we bury fear. And from this soil rises something new. This school is not just walls and roofs. It is a bridge between what you were and what you can become. The crowd murmured in agreement. Tears streaked Mama Fola's cheeks as she pulled Ayo close. Kofi's voice grew stronger. Once, you believed Marcos would curse you if your children learned, but Marcos was never a god. He was a chain. You carried that chain generation after generation. Today, you break it. He gestured to the children beside him. These will be the first to cross the bridge, but they will not walk alone. Fathers, mothers, elders, you too will learn. Letters are not for children only. They are for every voice, every hand, every heart that dares to rise. The officials clapped politely, but it was the villagers' cheer that shook the air. They chanted his name, Kofi, 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 their voices ringing against the hills. Then came the moment every child had waited for. Kofi picked up a stick of chalk, pure and white, and wrote the first word on the board, hope. The children gasped, leaning forward. What does it mean? Ayo asked breathlessly. Kofi smiled. It means tomorrow can be better than today. He invited Ayo to trace the letters. Her small fingers trembled, but she copied each line carefully. The crowd cheered as if she had drawn magic in the air. Then Musa stepped forward. With a steady hand, he wrote his own name. His father, standing at the back, pressed a hand to his chest and wept. One by one, children wrote their names, some crooked, some neat, but all alive. Their parents clapped and shouted with pride, forgetting the years they had once dragged these same children away from the mango tree. After the children, Kofi called forward Abiola. The man shook, sweat beading his forehead. I cannot, he whispered. You can, Kofi said gently. He handed him the chalk. Write the name of your son. Let him see you are not afraid. With trembling hand, Abiola scrawled the letters T-U-N-D-E. The letters were shaky, uneven, but they stood bold on the board. The crowd erupted, shouting, clapping. Tunde ran forward, hugging his father's waist, his small body shaking with joy. Abeni wept openly, her tears washing away months of bitterness. The drums began again, faster now, joyful. Women broke into dance. Children leapt and spun. Men stomped their feet in rhythm. The schoolyard became not just a place of learning, but a place of rebirth. Kofi watched it all, his heart swelling. He remembered the night he had been left for dead, in the jungle, the faces twisted in hate, the blows that had nearly ended him. And he remembered the children's laughter under the mango tree, the spark of curiosity that had carried him through pain. Now he saw the fruit of that seed. As the sun set, casting golden light on the school walls, Kofi stood once more before the villagers. His final words carried deep into the twilight. You mocked me when I was poor. You beat me when I was patient. You cast me out when I was innocent. Yet I returned, not with revenge, but with forgiveness. And that is the lesson of knowledge. It teaches us to rise above fear, above lies, above hate. Remember this always. Never judge a man by his clothes, his hunger, or his silence. You do not know the truth he carries. Treat every soul with dignity, for greatness may hide where you least expect it. The villagers bowed their heads. Some wept, some prayed, some whispered apologies into the evening air. The children, however, lifted their new books high, shouting in unison, "We will learn, we will grow, we will never forget the teacher." The mango tree swayed gently, its leaves rustling like applause. The village that had once been buried in superstition now stood on the edge of a new dawn. And as stars appeared in the sky, the people understood. This was not just the teacher's victory, it was theirs. The story of Kofi, the poor teacher mocked and cast out, only to return revealed in his true identity, became a lesson passed from mouth to mouth, heart to heart. And for generations to come, whenever children sat beneath the tree of first letters, They would remember the day their village was transformed by knowledge, by forgiveness, and by hope. In the heart of that forgotten village, ignorance had ruled for generations. They mocked the teacher, spat on him, beat him, and cast him out as a cursed beggar. Yet when the truth was revealed, they saw with their own eyes that the man they despised was not poor, not cursed, but a messenger of knowledge, a wealthy benefactor who had come only to give them light. The school he built became more than walls of brick and wood. It was a doorway to the future. Children who once feared letters now carried books with pride. Parents who once believed in curses now traced their own names with trembling hands. Fear lost its power, and hope took its place. The lesson is clear. Never judge a soul by the clothes they wear, the hunger they endure, or the silence they keep. Greatness often hides where we least expect it, and education, true education, is the key that unlocks dignity, freedom, and a brighter tomorrow. The teacher forgave those who wronged him, proving that knowledge without compassion is incomplete. He taught them that forgiveness is not weakness, but the strength to choose a different future. And so the village was transformed, not by miracles, not by superstition, but by truth. Let us remember always, poverty is not shame, ignorance is not destiny, and mocking the weak may one day leave us ashamed before their strength. Because knowledge is light, and light, once seen, can never be hidden again. Never mock the poor, for you may be mocking greatness in disguise. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to African Tales by Sanan, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from.